Throughout my life, I have faced many challenges. At the age of 10, I began my career as a gymnast. My first big hurdle was a back handspring, which was a very long and drawn-out process due to the fear of getting hurt. Although I made progress, the fear of getting hurt was just too much for me to handle, which is why I decided to quit gymnastics and pick up cheerleading. Making the transition was a big challenge and took me a good 6 months to get used to. Still, the fear of getting hurt was always my worst enemy. During my 8th grade year of cheerleading, my worst fears took place in the blink of an eye. I was in my normal tumbling class, and when it came time for me to go, I took off like a horse in a derby race. Everything was perfect until the very end, where I fell straight on my stomach. When I landed, all I felt was pain. I began to cry and realized that most of the pain was in my foot. After getting it checked, it was nothing serious, but from that day on, I could not trust myself at all. After that day, if I tumbled and felt any amount of pain at all, I would just give up and say I cannot do this anymore. All of this may seem of no real meaning, but this was the start of my journey to find out how to overcome my pain and take on a more determined personality. My freshman year as a Gaffney High School varsity cheerleader was a hard transition considering that on my other teams, the practices were not nearly as intense. Soon, the intensity of the practices began to wear on my body, and I began to have severe lower back pain. With some much-needed chiropractic work, I was able to get through it, and I made it through my first and second years as a varsity cheerleader. Going into my 3rd year, I began to have trouble with my ankle, which led to the use of an ankle brace, which was not very cool. Even the doctor had no idea what was wrong, but nothing was compared to my 4th and final year as a cheerleader. The pain began to be unbearable, and when I would cry and say I cannot do this anymore, my coach, Miss Ireton, would say, "Yes, you can, Taylor. Come on, you can do this." And that made me just work even harder. Many times, I would be on the verge of giving up, but then I would think of all the girls getting praised over me. This motivated me to get recognized and praised just like everybody else. All through my years as a cheerleader, I was always out to be the best, but there was always that one person that always had the spotlight on me, and that person's name was Callie. After realizing that it was my own fault for not having the spotlight, I decided to go after what I've always wanted, which was to be an all-region cheerleader. In order to show my coaches that I deserved to be an all-region cheerleader, I never gave up on anything. If I fell, I would get right back up and do it again despite the pain I felt. We finally made it to our region competition, and for the first time in history, Gaffney High School took home the region title. After the awards, it was time to announce who the all-region cheerleaders were. I sat there as name after name was called, losing hope with everyone. I was finally at the point of fury. Then at last, I heard Taylor Byars. I sat there in disbelief until everyone began to tell me, "Get up!" Then I shot up with excitement. I was so overwhelmed with joy, and I think everyone could tell. After realizing what I had achieved, my body filled with accomplishment and self-worth for the first time. I worked my butt off to get this title, and I literally got beat to the bone on the way there. But no matter what happens in my life, I know now that I can do anything if I set my mind to it. Now, when I want to give up on something, even as simple as reading, I reflect back to remember the determination I had in cheerleading and grasp it because I know the rewards it brings.